All right, good morning, folks. We will get started here. My name is Courtney. I'm the education programmer with BCMPHA. If you've attended any of our sessions, you've seen my little box in the corner speaking. Um, Feel free to check out our website as well. I'll include some more links to other sessions that are coming up. And if you ever have any questions or ideas of things you'd like to see, always please reach out. I'll include my email in the chat in a minute as well. I do want to just welcome you all to the session and acknowledge that today I'm coming from the traditional lands of Sauk Nation out on Vancouver Island, but the work of BC and PHA happens across the traditional unceded territories of over 199 distinct First Nations, and we do work throughout the province. So I'm always very thankful to be able to live, work, and play in these lands. I will
You're
pass
quiet,
over the mic
quiet.
to um, Pashel, who will lead you through the session. I will be here throughout, though, if you have any questions or tech concerns. Please feel free to aggressively wave, say something in the chat, and get our attention however makes sense to you. So I'll pass over the mic to the capable hands of Pashel.
All right, thank you, Courtney. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I know we are calling in from different parts of Canada, so good to have you all. We would be having an interesting conversation today. So this is not the first of its kind. We had something similar with the BC Housing last year, I think around the same time or February, I can't really recall. So the conversation has really been how do we reinforce some of the efforts we are already making, in our housing programs, right? What are some of the gaps that we've been seeing in the market so far? And how can we continue to provide support, guidance, and insights based on everything we are also seeing on this other lens as well to make sure that all the efforts that we're trying to make across housing is yielding more and more results that will be tenable to our funders and our stakeholders as well. So we're going to be discussing how credit empowerment is a very key driver for housing stability. And part of what we've seen is the fact that there's a lot of efforts going into housing programs now, especially with the challenges that we currently have in our great country today, which is housing. We want to make sure that we are looking at all the other missing links and pieces that can be used to reinforce and make the housing programs much more successful. So our focus today would be discussing how credit empowerment becomes that missing link that we are also seeing within the efforts that housing stability can achieve. Okay. So a quick introduction. My name is Pascal, and I am one of the team members from Binter Financial, and we've been working with housing providers, rent banks, and a bunch of other not-for-profit and for-profit organizations across Canada. We are also working with the credit bureaus in Canada as well. And our goal is to see how do we step into making sure that housing becomes not just the challenge that housing providers and the government have to fix, but also how can the private sector also step into the conversation and provide support on the housing challenges that Canada is currently facing. So before I start, I will somewhere in between the presentation, I would throw in some questions. So if you are listening in, I know your cameras are off. Desiree, I can see you. Courtney, I can see the both of you. So those are my two great friends. So anyone who can come on camera, fantastic. But if you can't and you can hear me, that's also fine. So I'll throw in some questions to the group as we go on, and please feel free to drop your comments, your thoughts on the chat, and even questions on the chat as well. And at the end, we would have time for Q&A. We will share some content that might be new to a lot of us. So please don't be shy. Feel free to drop your question, or if you can be bold enough to unmute, please feel free to do so when we get to the section for Q&A. Okay, so let's jump right in. So before we start, I want to share some statistics that some of us are already familiar with. So, but I'm bringing it here for emphasis and also to drive context, right? So Canada currently has over 5 million rental households. So meaning that if our country is somewhere around 80 million people, so 5 million of those people are still renting. And then um, over 1.7 million people uh, who are renting are paying more than 30% of their income on rent. So if this number doesn't get your attention, you can just give me a thumbs down right now in this conversation. So the fact that this much people are paying more than 30%, about one third of their income on rent is a huge call for a conversation, because if you take out one third of your income from your rent, then you agree with me that the remaining two thirds, if you, by the time you do all the other things, you find out that you're really struggling to touch other areas that might be of interest to you. So this is part of the reasons why we thought, if people are paying this much on their rent, then there has to be another conversation we need to have in terms of what else can that payment do for them to keep them not just house, but also help them unlock bigger and better opportunities down the line. And then this is another number I would like to show you today, which is the fact that over 9 million people in Canada today are credit invisible or have little credit. So let me break this down a bit further. So credit invisible means that if you walk into RBC or CIBC, or you are trying to access any program that requires credit history check. So 9 million people today would have a challenge with that exercise. So that's a lot. And that's something we need to talk about. And this is not a number that we should just sweep under the carpet and then talk about everything else. So the fact that we have this much people who are exposed to not the typical financing, or if they want to go rent a house, market rate, market housing programs, or they want to access services that require credit history, 9 million people are going to struggle to do so. Now, we have 5 million rental households. We have over 1.7 million people who are paying more than about a third of their income on rental payments. And then we have this much people who are credit invisible or cannot access standard credit programs. That is part of where we saw the gap between housing, finance, and then how can we make sure that we marry both of them and create more support for people. Now, Canada has a housing stability problem. This is not news. Everybody knows this. But the part that most people are still find very hard to process is the fact that even though we do have a housing problem, housing alone cannot solve the problem. So this is one of those conversations where you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that was used to create it in the first place. So this means that we need to start exploring what other interventions, what other programs, what other initiatives can we bring to the table to reinforce the efforts that housing is already making. And everyone in this room will agree with me that there's been lots and lots of effort. There've been millions and hundreds of millions of budgets thrown into housing. We still find out that some areas of this housing problem is still persistent. Okay. And yeah, we've agreed here that rent is still among the largest payments that most people make on a monthly basis. And, the rent has to go out before you even buy food or pay for your phone, or if you have a credit card. Like, this piece must happen. And the reason why it must happen is the fact that, once your accommodation is threatened, once your shelter is threatened, every other thing is on the line. So this is why, if we are paying this much in rents, or if we have renters or tenants who pay this much in rent, we should think about it. Now, the challenge is not that people pay this much in renting. The real challenge is the fact that beyond meeting the agreement between the renter and the housing provider, or the renter and the landlord, beyond meeting that obligation, the rent counts for nothing else. It doesn't show up anywhere in your records that you've been paying your rents for 6 months, for 6 years. It doesn't show up anywhere else. And that's a problem. So what we've decided to do is to say, how can we capture these huge payments that people make on a monthly basis in such a way that it doesn't just improve your ability to be a good tenant, it also can open up other doors for you, especially helping you stay stable. So rent payments today do not currently count as part of your credit file in Canada. And that's part of what we've been working on to see how we can support renters achieve. So most stable renters, most people you consider renters who are paying on time, they are just one shock away from instability. Just something just needs to happen, and then their ability to pay rent is threatened. So it could be a missed paycheck that they get from work, or a medical expense just show up unplanned, right? Or there is a car repair that just happens unplanned, or a move needs to happen. So the moment people go into unplanned expense scenarios, their ability to pay their rent becomes threatened. And it's not because people do not want to pay. So this is not a poor behavior issue. It is just the fact that the system currently, which takes rental payments to meet lease obligations, is not providing any additional support for those people to be prepared for what if something happens. Okay. And most of us here, we've been doing a very fantastic job keeping people housed, right? And you will agree with me that there are people who consistently, they pay their rents faithfully. You don't have to even remind them, right? They pay their rents on time. And this is helping them keep housing stable. And they're also trying to, move forward in other areas of their life. But sometimes these people can hit financial walls. And when that happens, then the conversation changes, right? And when these things happen, it's not because people want to fail. Nobody decides to go into a crisis. It is just that by virtue of the fact that they've been paying their rents on time for years now, and housing providers, we are doing a great job to keep them housed. We haven't been able to do a whole lot more, or even expose them to better opportunities that can extend their rental payment power into other areas of their lives. So we've seen a scenario where in our current system today in Canada, we reward small payments that people make on a monthly basis, but we ignore the bigger ones. So if you're on a phone plan now and you pay somewhere around $40 a month, that builds your credit history. If you have a credit card and you have to just pay $40 a month, that builds your credit history. But guess what? If you pay rents of $1,500 a month, it doesn't do anything on your credit history. If you live in Vancouver like I do, and you pay 2,500, 3,500 rental payments a month, that has no value whatsoever on your credit history. So this is the reality that the renters that we support, this is their current reality. So they are paying this much. We are making efforts to keep them housed. But the problem becomes when they need other forms of support. For example, they run into a crisis. They want to access, money immediately. They walk into any bank. They're going to get rejected. So this is the reason why most people resort to things like payday loans. And I'm not against payday loans. I know it's there to serve a purpose, but we've all agreed that payday loans has been the reason why most people have stayed in the cycle of economic disadvantage. Because you take a loan of, say, $3,000, and guess what? By the time you finish paying, you're paying $6,000, $7,000. And that doesn't make any sense. So if we have renters who do not have great credit history, and we are providing housing and shelter for them, we sit in the middle of a great opportunity between them and them building their credit. So the rents we collect from renters to keep them housed can do a whole lot more for them than keeping them housed, which is it can prevent them from going into financial crisis in the future just by how we treat that rental payment. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. And also as housing providers as well, you want to make sure that your hope is that your renters are always great. They pay their rent on time. Arrears, NSFs, evictions, those are not conversations you want to have. But guess what? You also still sit in the position where the rents you collect from the tenants on a monthly basis can help you achieve that. So if you are able to position your renters well to build their credit, they would be exposed to better economic opportunities. And then guess what? They become better tenants. And not just that. I know that for some of us, we have housing programs that are short term. For some of us, we wish that we can get our renters to move into market housing. Helping your renters build their credit can help you achieve that as well. Because if they build up their credit history from the rents they pay today, it's easier for them to go to rental market options and apply for renters. So you can see that by occupying the position of a housing provider to your tenants, there's a whole lot more you can do for them, which is empowering them to build their credit history. So housing stability and financial stability, operationally, they are connected. Okay. And what happens today is we build fantastic apartments or houses, and then we keep people housed there. And then the challenge is after we've kept them housed, when they have other needs that housing cannot solve at that point in time, for example, financial needs, they now move to access financial services with systems that cannot recognize them. So what housing providers can do is, I'm providing housing for my renters. I think they can also be an opportunity for me to better position them so that if they decide to access services outside of housing, that becomes easier for them. So this whole credit empowerment initiative or program, it's not just continuity. It is a way to interrupt people's distress and make them move smoother into better opportunities. Okay, so the bigger question is, what if housing did not just prevent harm, but also create financial momentum for renters, right? And this does not involve the renter taking on any debts. This is not charity, and they don't even have to change their behavior. So all they need to do is just continue to pay their rent the way they've always paid it. But right now, this can do a whole lot more for them. Okay. So this is where the shift in the conversation starts to happen, right? And housing providers can start to think about credit empowerment as a housing infrastructure in itself, right? So this is the means by which the payments that tenants make on a monthly basis can start creating credit signals for them in the future, right? And they do not need to take on any debts. There is no need for you to help them guarantee any stuff. And for you, the housing provider as well, this is not going to be an extra staff load or effort for you. So this is just making sure that the payments that people make on a monthly basis at rents, as rents, starts to get recognized in places where it's really going to shift their lives in a positive direction. So the housing stability blocker. So when people do not have good credits or low credits like we saw, or they don't even have credit at all, they are blocked in housing. If they want to move into a new apartment, that's going to be a real challenge. Most times we hear and see people being asked to pay 2, 3 months deposits to be able to access rentals, right? Utility also becomes a challenge for them to access as well. And a lot of people who also aspire to own houses someday, they are stuck in this cycle of renting. Why? They will never qualify for a mortgage because they do not have a good credit history. Okay. And even when they try to access banking programs, their options are limited. They will have to go through payday loan programs and pay as high as 35% in some instances. So this is not the cycle that we want to expose our renters to. Okay. And this is where we want to talk about the credit empowerment, what it is, what it looks like, and what kind of solutions it can create for housing stability. So this program is referred by some people as rent reporting. And it is a process by which, as a housing provider, you record the payments of your tenants or your renters, and that gets captured within the credit file of that person with, say, an Equifax or a TransUnion. And over time, what happens is just by reporting that Connie or Stacy or Joey, I'm just calling names on the um on the call. So please don't, and I'm not asking you any question yet. So just by reporting the payments that our renters make, we start to build their credit history. Now, this is the interesting part. We have people who have faithfully paid their rents, or they've been paying their rents consistently for a long time, in some instances, 2 years. The Credit Empowerment Program allows you to go back in time and report their rents for up to 24 months in the past, so that that can actually help them build their credit even faster. Okay. And this is not a program that tenants must be forced to be like, you can't impose this on your tenants. They have the option to say, I want to be in this program, or I do not want to be in this program. And that's how the program is being designed, to help people embrace support that can get them out of a wrong cycle that they don't want to be in. And this is not just for the renter. It's also an opportunity for the housing provider, because what it does for you is it lowers your risk of arrears and NSF. Okay. And then you realize that your renters would have to now embrace fewer and fewer crisis interventions. Okay. And if you have a longer term housing program, because your renters know that this can help them build credit, it also helps with retention and how the relationship works. And for organizations that need to provide data or reports in terms of the impacts you are having on your renters, this becomes a critical data point for you to access for your funders and stakeholders as well. So the whole program helps shift the whole housing support from a reactive approach, which is there is crisis, let's step in, to how do we prevent this crisis from even happening in the first place. So it goes from a reactive support that you provide your renters to something much more proactive. Okay, so when rent is recognized to build credit for renters, it drives up accountability, it reduces financial stress for them, it softens the stress that comes with arrears, and outcome that you provide your renters become measurable. Okay, and this is the kind of experience that you can expect your renters to have. And there is data that Equifax has shown that more than half of the people who are supported through this program do not need to take a loan to build their credit. So the program alone can actually help them build their credit, because if you think about how much they're paying on a monthly basis, and the fact that that becomes a consistent financial behavior, that starts to count for something for them. Okay, so what we are imagining is when this program grows and we have more and more renters supported in the program, in the next 5 to 10 years, the way the government and our housing funders, evaluate impact is going to change, right? This will now become another data point that we'll like to start seeing in the future, to say, I support X number of renters. How many of them was I able to help do X, Y, Z as well? So this could become a very interesting data point that we capture as housing providers, in terms of how we support our tenants in the future. So it will become something that will be expected. And for context, in March 2024, our former Prime Minister announced that housing providers and other stakeholders within the housing space would start recognizing rental payments as part of credit history building signal. And our organization has been ahead of that conversation before that announcement was made. And that's why we're trying to drive this across many provinces and providers as much as we can. Okay, so in summary, this is where I'm going to wrap up. I can see some of you taking notes, for those that I can see, and I know you have a bunch of questions. So I'm going to wrap up here and then give us time for Q&A. So in summary, everything we've said here is rental payments is amongst the largest recurring payments that more than about one third of people make in Canada today. But unfortunately, the current credit system doesn't capture it. So we are just beginning to say, how do we start capturing this information? And that gap between the effort people make to pay their rents and the fact that it's not being captured, that gap exposes people to all kinds of crises and missed opportunities. So this program corrects this structural omission so that we can support more and more renters, and this can help us drive most of our housing stability initiative and make sure that the renters we support get better financial stability. So this is not a new program. This is just a recognition of an existing reality. I want to make sure that we keep the conversation going as much as we can. Okay, so that's what we wanted to share with you. We have a bunch of other slides, but I want to pause here for question and answers because I know some of your questions will trigger me to pull up more slides. But I want to pause here and thank you for being such a great listening audience. And I would like to take your questions now.
Hi, I can go first. I have lots of questions. My first question is about what is the cost? I'm assuming there's a cost associated to the service providers to facilitate the reporting of rent to the credit bureaus. Could you tell us a little bit about what the cost of that is and how that facilitation is set up between the service providers and your team?
Absolutely, Desiree. I'm not sure why you picked the cost as the first question, but so let me see how I can answer that. So if we've had renters come to us directly to get the service, it costs somewhere around $10 a month per renter, right? Now, what we've done is to work with housing providers to say, if you have all of these people, how do we work with you to reduce that cost? So the cost is not fixed, it is tiered based on volume. And if this is something that the organization is really interested in, like sincerely speaking, we've never had an organization we work with that cost became a barrier. So we'll work with you to see how many people do you currently support, how many do you want to bring into the program, and then we can work around the cost structure and see where would you most fit into the program. So to give you an estimate, if people come by themselves to do this, like the renters themselves, it's somewhere around $10. But if the housing provider comes, it reduces that cost sometimes by about half or less than that. So that's to give you context. And then that will now be a volume conversation.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Some of the other questions I had written down was, what about clients who are on income assistance or PWD and their rent is paid from a rent portion? I'm wondering if those folks are also eligible for this program or if because their rent portion is the thing that's paying rent, it is not reportable.
So we've looked at that scenario. That's a very good question. Thanks for bringing that up as well. I imagine a bunch of other people have the same question. For people to be on income assistance, they need to meet certain behavioral requirements to be in that program. So what we've done is we would capture that as payments for them. So the payment is made on their behalf. So we'll record that in their interest as well. So they also qualify to be in the program because they have to meet certain criteria on the income assistance program. So we treat that as consistent behavior to access financing. Does that answer your question, Desiree?
Yeah, totally. That's great. I have a few more questions, but maybe I'll wait to give other people a chance, and then if it's crickets, I'll keep asking questions.
Okay. Okay, let me see.
I had a question. How does the reporting happen? Like, how do you facilitate that? So that, like, do we go through Binta and then Binta reports to Equifax? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so I have a slide to quickly share that. So this is actually what happens today, right? If you can see my screen, please do let me know. So standard rent payments today, you have, let's say a renter, maybe his name is Pascal, right? He has a credit score of say 580. So what happens today is I pay my rent to my housing provider, right? And guess what? It has no impact on my credit score. So this is what happens today. So with the program, what happens is that you still have me I pay my rent to my housing provider on a monthly basis, and that's my credit score. The difference here is that the housing provider now have to translate to Binta that this person paid their rent for December on time. So Binta takes that information and translates that to Equifax. Now, what you give us is a very simple information about, say, which name do I call now? Say Stacy paid their rent for December on time. I take that information, then I will have to translate that information into different data points that will make sense to Equifax and fit into Stacy's profile with Equifax. And that's what builds their credit over time. So the way it works is your renters continue to do exactly what they do today. You don't have to change anything. Okay. The only difference in what changes is that you as a housing provider will now work with us to say, on a monthly basis, these are all the people who paid their rent, and then we will report that data to Equifax, and Equifax will process that into the person's credit file. And over time, they will start to see that show up on their credit history as payments on time for rents. Now, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm also just thinking like administratively, like that's more work for the housing provider.
Great question. So this has come up, I can bet you, like 500 times in our conversation. So let me tell you what we've done. We will never tell you that this does not require administrative work. So at the very beginning, so when we onboard you into the program, the onboarding process is where work happens. And this can be work somewhere up to 2 months that we work with you to get you set up. Once you get set up in the system, and some organizations have set up in 6 weeks, some in 4, just for context. So it's really a question of how available is your team to make the setup happen. After we set you up and the system is live, what you need to do on a monthly basis to tell us who has paid their rent takes less than 5 minutes every month. So setup is where the work is. After we set you up, you have access to the system. On a monthly basis, all you need to do to tell us all the people who have paid, and when I say all, even in their thousands, if you have up to 1,000 renters or more, it takes you just clicking. You can click, select everyone who has paid, unselect who has not paid, and push submit. So if this is something you are interested in, we can just show you how the system works before you even make a decision to sign up. As in, you will now see how easy the whole administrative program is just after you are onboarded. So we like to always caveat, onboarding is where the work is, okay? But it's not undoable. We've set up organizations who are currently running the program. So it's not impossible. Organizations have done it. But once you are set up on a monthly basis, you don't even need to call anybody. You go into the system, click, submit, and that's all you need to do.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that. And also, one of the slides mentioned about it being optional for tenants. So, how does that go? Like, so is this something that we like reach out to our tenants about, and if they're interested in having their rent payments reported, they let us know and then we do that? Like, how does it?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So if you decide to sign up for the program, we will work with you. We'll show you about 12 different channels that have worked. So based on how your communication happens between you and your tenant, we'll show you what channel will work the most and become the most effective for you. So you will need to notify your renters that this program does exist and get their consent to sign up. So I'll tell you what more different providers have done. So some providers have said, we'll contact all our renters, then they will provide consents and they are onboarded. What other providers have done is reporting their rental payments has now become part of their lease agreement. So as a tenant is signing their lease agreement, they are already providing consent to be in the program. So you don't have to go back and get consent from them again. So consent happens when they are being onboarded into your housing program. What other providers have done is they've created an addendum to their existing lease agreement and then send that to the renters as part of their, I think most programs do like an annual rental renewal or review. So during that annual review process, you send this to the client to the renter as part of the documents they have to review and sign. And when I say documents, it's not a document, it's just a clause. Okay, so there've been different ways by which housing providers have onboarded renters into the program. So you would get the renter to consent either after they're already in your housing program or just when they're about to come in. And then we've also had providers who their renters have probably moved on, right? They moved on 3 months ago, but they were renting for, say, the past 3 years before they moved on. You can actually still report for the time that they've paid if they are interested. So the program gives you a chance to go back in time and give people value for the rent that they've paid for up to 2 years. So when we talk about the consent process and program, we will work with you on that. So this is still part of where the onboarding work is, like I described earlier. So we'll show you what options work. You can assess that based on the systems you have, the time you have as well, so that you can take the part of least resistance for your program. That was a long answer. Now, did you get my?
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A quick follow-up question for that,
Sure.
please. Once the tenants have provided their consent, can they withdraw their consent at any time?
Okay, who asked that question? Let me see if I can see your name.
Pearl.
Yeah, Pearl. That's a very good question. Yes, so you can opt in and opt out anytime. And I know the follow-up question we usually get is, so when the tenant opts out, what happens to their credit score? Nothing. It doesn't negatively impact them in any way. So now think about this program as it was designed to empower people. It wasn't designed to punish. Okay. And if somebody wakes up tomorrow and thinks, I don't need this anymore, or for some reason, I don't want it. I don't want to even see this anywhere near my credit history or report. They can just simply, if it will show you what the process look like for you to opt them out. And it's a simple delete button. So you don't need to go through any administrative work. There is no form to fill. You go into the system, we'll show you where you just go to the person's profile, select their name, type the reason why you are deleting their profile so that gets tracked in our audit process. And then you can just take them out of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then we also get questions like, what if they change their mind and decide to come back? You can still get them into the program, but it doesn't just build up off of where it stopped. That has to be a new process that we will start with them. Okay, thanks for that question, Pearl. I have another question in the chat. Since this program helps improve credit scores, how does it affect participants who are inconsistent with payments? That's a good question. For those enrolled in the program, they're not meeting requirements to pay on time. Will this lower? Yes. So the question here is, what if I enroll a renter or a tenant and they are not consistent with their payments? So if they are not consistent with their payments, and you report they are not consistent with their payments, it's going to impact their credit score negatively. So we usually recommend that the people you enroll into the program should be people that you know pay on time. If they don't pay on time and you report their rent as missed payment, we are just going to translate exactly what you gave us to Equifax. So we don't change any report that you give us. If you say Pascal did not pay on time, missed 2 months, that's exactly what we report, and that will impact them negatively. So our recommendation is the people that you onboard into the program should be the ones who you know pay their rent on time, just so that the program gives them value and not trouble. Okay. Then, yeah, so there were 2 parts of the questions. I think I answered that already from BL New. All right. I'm waiting. More questions, please.
Thank you, Pascal.
You're welcome, sir. Desiree, you say you had more questions. Do you want to go and keep us going with the questions until we get more?
Yes, please. When it comes to reporting, do you folks report back to both Equifax and TransUnion, or is there one over the other that it gets reported to?
So in Canada today, only Equifax offers this program.
Okay.
Yeah, but in the US, Equifax, TransUnion, Experian all offer it. So in Canada, it's just Equifax. So we are hoping that TransUnion will come to the party soon, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another question I had is when it comes to like rent payment, what about the situation where the program that I'm thinking of is transitional housing? It's like 18-month housing where folks are paying what we call like a program fee because they don't actually have an RTA signed. If they're paying a program fee like that, where it's not falling under the Residential Tenancy Act, can those monthly payments still be reported to Equifax, noting that this person is making this monthly program fee payment? Or is there a requirement of an RTA being signed?
That's a great question. So what we would do, we will sit down with you and understand the terms of the RTA first, and then see what obligations the person has to meet on a monthly basis. So if the payment is what keeps them housed in that program, we'll need to assess that and advise you, is this something we can capture or not? To give you context, we have another organization we work with. So they do not have like they support renters, but not under a housing program. So they give out rent relief loans to those renters. So what we've done is to work with them to say, if these people are repaying these rent relief loans on a monthly basis, let's use that to build credit history for them. So some of the work we've done has also been to look at an organization that really want to support their renters and then understand how you are structured and all the other things you have going on that is trying to support renters and see how we can work with you. If those are things we can help you report, we can assess them and then tell you if there'll be a fit for the Equifax standard or not. So we can talk about that and then I can advise you if this is doable or not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Desiree, I guess that was the last question. Okay. All right. So, in the absence of any other questions, if you really want to learn more about some of the work that we are doing, I'm going to just share. So you can just scan the barcode here if you want to follow up in a conversation. And the email there is our email is info@vintafinancial.com. You can call us on that number, or you can come check us at Robson Street in Vancouver if you live in Vancouver. If you don't, yes, thank you for that, Courtney. So you can contact us, or you can scan the barcode. It summarizes the program. You'll see the landing page of the program, and you can drop your questions or requests, or if you want to chat more, happy to do that as well. Yeah, so thank you all so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting with those of you. If you are interested to have your organization be a part of the program, you want to learn more about the program, you have questions that you want to ask, but you are afraid of my face, the way I sound today, we can find time to talk more and we can help you get through those questions as well. Okay. And in the absence of anything else, Courtney, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pascal. It was great. I loved all the questions that we had. And again, I put the link in there. And then if you have any other questions or suggestions for further sessions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. We'll be happy to connect. Yeah, I will stop the recording now. And I'm always the last one to leave the room in case there's any lingering questions that people didn't feel comfortable asking to a whole room full of people. Awesome. Thanks, folks. Great to see you all.
All right. Sounds good. Bye, everyone.